Okay, go right ahead, sorry.
This is the city commission work session meeting for Thursday, June the 9th in the city commission chambers. Roll call, please.
Mayor Litchfield,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Moya.
Here.
Sorry. Commissioner Villar,
Here.
Commissioner Arias.
Here.
Commissioner Cherry.
Here.
Okay, we have discussion items. The first one being streets, which we all know are terrible. So, you want to give us any kind of an update or?
No, ma'am, I have nothing.
Okay.
Actually, why I wanted to put it on the work session was because we have such an amount of people calling us, and actually, I cannot remember who called me Monday or Tuesday. But the deal is, let's see if we could do some kind of a plan, a blueprint or something, how we're gonna address this issue. Because one of the things that we have to look at is the fact is that anytime our infrastructure starts to deteriorate, and if we don't attend to it, then we wind up with 3 times the problem later on. So this is something that maybe if we could do some kind of scoop of work to, it has really gotten out of hand because of the fact is the funding has not been available. And maybe now, if the commission starts the discussion, maybe we can go forward with how we're going to address this issue as a long-term plan, maybe a short-term plan. It's important because people are really, I can understand,
yeah.
I
I went yesterday to an EPCOG meeting, and they said if we were needing any kind of help on grants or anything, if we would call them, and I said, well, seems like every time we call you, we don't get any help, but, anyway. But Constance Williams assured me that she would try to
work with it.
work with it, and so did Sandy Chansey, so, and one of the things, I didn't bring my notes with me, and I should have, one of the things they did have is one for infrastructure.
Mhm.
So we might contact EPCOG and see what they can do to help.
I think if we combine what you have right there, and also with Senator Campos and the DOT, how well they were trying to work with us. There may be a little grant writing somewhere in that area. Maybe we can start tackling this problem, because it's a major problem. I don't want to see our streets to the point where we have to grade them and put dirt or whatever, because it is hard to drive in some of the streets that I didn't realize the south part of town was that bad until I was out there doing some things.
Because Vincent Soul
Mhm.
works with DOT too, so he might could help us.
Who?
Vincent Soul over at EPCOG.
Oh, and that's what we need. We really need to start addressing, even if it is 1 or 2 or 3 blocks at a time. But as long as we start tackling it, I think we can start having solutions.
Well, I think it was brought up here recently that we're gonna look for that scope of work that was done in the year past, right? Wasn't there a plan on streets that was developed years ago and was never followed?
It was an asset management plan that's, yes, and it goes through, and at that time, it shows the study of which streets were the worst at that point.
Right.
And that was the priority that they're taking care of.
Prioritized.
Correct.
And we haven't done that in a while. You have
No,
any
not
idea
so
what
much
it
following that
costs to get
plan.
Another one?
What we've been doing is the grants that we are going after through NMDOT, they have been strategic in places where there's not as many utilities. For example, we talked about the Second Street project, we're looking at $1 million a block with utilities. And typically, with the exception of this year, which they're allowing some funds for utilities and DOT, we had to front or figure out how was the city going to pay for utilities. There was no use in going through and repaving the streets, being able to place utilities underneath. So the most recent project area is in the Barnes addition. We got over $1 million. So we are trying, and during budget talks coming up, about paying some of our employees what they're worth and maybe getting new positions if we have to. Because we could have all the money in the world, we could have all the equipment in the world, but if we don't have the employees, talk about in the upcoming future as well, is paying these streets personnel what they're worth.
I know Monroe Street's got some, it's got some huge in front of the Assembly of God Church, and I know there's lots of traffic on that street.
And actually, to be honest with you, we have already discussed the fact that we are looking at how we're going to increase the pay on employees. And that's something that we're going to be looking now with the budget coming up and how we're going to work on that. But at the same time, it seems like we don't have a plan on how to address The biggest issue right now with the residents, that's where they're very, I cannot remember who was the one who talked to me Monday and said, maybe we better if we graded the road and just let them, whatever you call it.
What I heard is they said they should let them mill it and just go all over it.
Yeah, but, some of these, I mean, actually, to be honest with you, back in, it's been quite a while, we did an estimate. And every block that has a 50, a lot, 50 by 150, and if you look at the front part of the lot, just that little partial, a lot in half the street, you're looking at almost $10,000 just for that partial in the front of your house. So, and actually, nobody can afford that, so we're gonna have to see how we can come up and accommodate the concerns of the citizens. And I think we need to focus more, whether it be grants, whether it be whatever we can, and see what we can do. Because this is a real key issue with the residents right now.
Right.
So we agree with you on that, 100%. What's the solution?
The solution is, if you're listening, is let's see if we can get some grants for it. Let's see if we can work with the highway department in Las Vegas. And let's see how we can budget a little bit at a time for our matching
Haven't been
funds.
doing that?
No, we haven't, sir.
All right, let's,
Well, I was gonna say, I talked to us before the commission, same manager about, buying some of that UPM. I think it would really work on our roads.
did we use that?
Yes, ma'am, we've used that before. It's just very, very costly. It's a lot more expensive.
Would like the lithotape or something like that, the binder?
The material Commissioner Villanueva is referencing is the stuff that comes in the bags. And
It's
it's
like 80-pound bag or
good, but it's really, really expensive.
it's like $9 a bag.
That might, we might see what we can do about
Would
trying
that
to
just
get
fill
funding
in,
for it.
you just pour it in the hole?
Well, you sweep it out, blow it out, and maybe put your material, even if the hole has water, according to that, you pour the bag, it should still pack.
So would one bag fill one hole? I mean,
Well, it depends how deep the hole is.
okay,
But if it's say.
well, like some of those on Monroe.
I think a half a bag will probably come.
Okay.
It takes quite a bit.
You got
You imagine it's about the volume of the size of Quick Creek, so it goes quick. The thing with it, it has oil in it and it's really good material. We've utilized it before with the water department, we've utilized it with the streets, but we can only buy so many pallets at a time. It goes really quickly.
Can we just pour concrete in?
No.
It'd really be hard, Ellie, to asphalt will get away and the concrete's right there.
Well, I don't know a solution
No.
either. I like the idea of an audit. We need to know priority. We need to have a priority. I know if you get CDBG, that can only be applied in certain areas.
Correct.
DOT doesn't have those requirements, or do they do?
Not income requirements, no, sir. It has to meet certain project requirements. If it's, depending on what type of funding source it's in DOT, if it's an arterial road, it has to be, of course, connecting to major highways. So that's typically trying to connect something to Route 66 or to Main Street because it's a state highway. The other with the co-op, we have a lot more leniency where we can do, that's why we're doing Barnes Edition. It's not a state highway, but it's a project that fits within that scope. So we definitely are, we have staff working on grants all the time. There's plenty of grant money coming down. It's just, again, there's only so much we can do at a time.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, you've asked us several times, and the previous city manager asked us for a strategic plan to be able to address these issues.
Correct.
So I think if we could sit down and get a strategic plan for the entire city and include, I mean, the streets aren't just our only issue, but
No,
lay out all of our problems and come up with viable solutions for those problems, rather than tackling them one at a time. That way we have it laid out.
Do we
It's a
not have
benchmark.
a strategic plan at all?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Ooh, that's bad.
Well, no, we've had one, though. It just hasn't been updated.
Not to my knowledge, we've had different MRA plans, we've had comprehensive plans, but strategic plans more as goals and missions of the city on how we're going to conduct business, what's the main priorities, and how we can accomplish those goals.
Because Ron, in that, we were talking about yesterday at that meeting, if we didn't have strategic plans,
Let me look at my notes.
because we need to get that before we start asking for,
Let me look at my notes.
okay?
I forgot what it was.
Sit down.
Over the radio.
But anyway, that's something that
Yeah.
at least it's.
Comprehensive plan.
A comprehensive plan.
That was it.
It would bring it up, see what we
Yeah.
can do, because it's really, really
Right.
a constant
Well, that
topic
could be
among
one
the
of our
residents.
Main project, one of our main objectives in streets.
But I don't know, I remember Compost came down and spent time with the planet. He went and saw a lot of streets on the other side, you know. And I know that Senator Compost is very well connected with the highway department as far as
Right.
being able to get things done.
Can you give me his phone number?
Yeah, I can, I'll call you.
Okay. Okay. Or you can text it to me, whatever you want to do.
What happened with me before?
We've used him, but we had some,
He ordered for us to get
right,
a new pothole machine, and it was rejected.
But not by,
It was rejected by the
Governor Line vetoed.
Oh, was it that one?
yeah, she got line video it after somebody called out there and said we didn't need it.
No, I just wondered,
Yeah.
you know, if you can help us, why hadn't you?
He has,
is your mic dead?
he's done a lot.
I put new batteries in, so I think I should be good.
Okay, so next item is the fireworks.
Yes, ma'am. I want to bring this to the commission's attention because we are on a timeline, considering the severe drought that we've been in lately with
Yeah.
minimal, almost no moisture. Previously, I know the commission has passed a proclamation that states certain certain fireworks are banned. Most of those are typically arterial missile type rockets, helicopters, aerial spinners.
But they still shoot them off.
They still shoot them off, but I wanted to discuss this with the commission, get your all's feeling, because if we're wanting to pass that proclamation declaring a severe drought and banning the fireworks, then we need to do so 20 days prior to the 4th, and we're moving up on that. Wanting to have a special meeting next Thursday, the 16th, so that would be the meeting where we'd have to pass that proclamation.
Okay.
My question.
Go ahead.
Is it 20 days before the holiday or 20 days before the selling season starts, which is 10 days before the holiday?
I'm pretty sure before the holiday, I'm looking it up right now.
I'm sorry, Mark, I don't remember.
I believe it's the holiday.
If it's a holiday, we have time. If not, we're,
Because I noticed there's one already starting to set up on First Street.
you know, it's. And if we do this, you know, it only limits just the aerials and firecrackers.
It allows the fountains and the ground stuff.
Well, in the mines, it allows, because when they pass a statute, they specifically called the aerials to stick rockets and rockets. Now they have mines that aren't covered by statute that still go in the air first. But it's not as bad because the other, they get shot up higher or whatever, and they don't, the trajectory is usually.
What about the Elks? Are they, have you talked to anybody, you know if they're gonna have?
I did go speak with them, I think it was Monday, to ask if they'd be willing to contribute to a fireworks show, if we were able to have one. And they have to get back, and I told them I'd have a definite answer after tonight's meeting. I said, we're gonna go to the meeting, and depending on how that goes is dependent on how we can move forward. One thing that I have been told from the interim fire chief is fireworks are in low supply. So even if we had able to have a firework display, he'd have to place an order tomorrow, and it's not guaranteed we get the full amount that we typically do.
Right.
Price has gone up in shipping as well. We pay nearly as much in shipping as we do for the fireworks, and it usually comes around to about $8,000 to $10,000 for fireworks with the shipping. But I think that's up to the commission. A, whether we pass a proclamation, and then B, does that include the Elks, or does that negate them? I feel being consistent across the board, but again, that's up to the commission.
We do have a bad drought, and we do have a lot of vacant lots, and because of the drowness, how dry it is, everything's kindled. It just starts like that, you know. So probably the best bet to do is just go ahead and restrict it.
For the consumers,
Mhm.
okay, how about the Elks?
I think they need to go in the same
I
category.
don't think so.
Well, I do.
And here's the reason,
Why?
you know, it's in one spot. It's not consumer fireworks, so they're explosives, but they go up high enough that normally they don't pose a danger. But there's always enough fire departments around that they usually take care of any problem they have in that vicinity. And then it negates some of the consumers going out and buying the stick rockets or whatever and using them. If the Elks will have a good show, I'd rather people spend their money and donate to the Elks and have a good show out there because it's in one spot and it could be handled safely.
No, I understand, and I'm not arguing over that. I'm just trying to be fair right straight across the board.
And I don't want them in my neighborhood.
I just
Yeah,
think if
that's
we
why-
don't have a public display, then
They're gonna be all over
it could
town.
be a lot worse around town and in the county.
Control we can.
But anyway, do the proclamation and then we'll,
So let's go ahead and move forward with the proclamation declaring the severe or extreme drought conditions at the next meeting. Trying to find it now, we're discussing the actual time. I want to say it's 20 days prior to
Well,
the holiday.
if we don't meet the requirements, then not much we can do about it.
Okay. You still looking at fireworks thing?
I'll continue looking, but we could go ahead and move on. to the
Okay,
next
let's go ahead and do the city attorney. Discussion regarding the city attorney.
So I put this on the agenda because the city attorney, our general counsel, it expires at the end of this month. And I just wanted to get some feedback from the commission. I know there was some concern previously, especially when we were discussing our cannabis ordinance and some of the other things. I know there was some displeasure, so I just needed some guidance and wanted to see if the commission was willing to extend that contract for another year, if it's time to move on and find somebody else.
Didn't we change?
Last year we changed, but we've been under contract since July 1.
Right, to, what's this one? say?
New Mexico.
Yeah.
It's NMLGL.
Right.
I think it's New Mexico local government law. And
no way, I'm sorry, which one is that? The current that you have?
That's the
current one we have now.
Just for cannabis.
No, just,
no, so
That's
for
the current.
cannabis, we use it for cannabis, but then we ended up
Van
using.
Fleck is one we're talking about now.
Mhm.
No,
So NMLGL is the law firm that we contracted with. They're our day-to-day general counsel. They're the ones that we wanted to satisfy when it came to the cannabis ordinance. And then after that, we relied on an attorney that's contracted out to New Mexico Municipal League to help spruce up the cannabis ordinance. And I know the commission was really satisfied with that law firm. That's why I'm asking, is it time to give our existing attorneys another year, or is it time to move on and try to find somebody else that we feel is more appropriate?
Outside the cannabis ordinance, was the current law firm responsive and did you utilize them?
We did utilize them minimally. I think there was some hesitation based on some of the answers we received. So with that, yeah, I think they were responsive, but maybe not the answers we were looking for.
I think the manager ought to check and just see what's available and have some options. I've had dealings with the other attorneys and I'm biased on it.
well, you know, and I think we're also gonna have to look at the fact is that the commission, being the governing body, we're gonna have to have more access to them when we have questions too. You know, I think a lot of times we put it all in the city manager when we have some questions that we feel there are necessities that we want to answer. We, you know, it's almost, we have to go through him, and sometimes we don't. I don't want to see that. I want to have questions we want to ask about them in person.
I don't know. What has the statute cover that?
No,
Well, yeah, we
can
always
talk
had
to
an
them.
attorney. This is,
No. I'm talking about the attorney's the city attorney. How,
It's a
what's the
contract,
statute
it's a
say
contract,
about us contacting that attorney?
No, I'm not contacting the person, but when we have meeting, that's what I'm saying, because every time a person contacts them, then actually what happens, they charge, but I'm not talking about that. I want them available when we are doing discussion in one of our meetings, you know what I mean?
Oh, I see. You want them sitting here during the meeting?
No,
like they
or
usually
tell,
are?
Be available.
Yeah,
Okay.
because, we had a couple of incidents when they did recommendation, we went against it, and actually it was the best thing we did, we won,
Okay, I see your point there.
Yeah, and actually, we're all business people, we know a lot about a lot of things, and certainly we need to understand that when we ask a question, we get an answer.
Well, and that can be on an as-needed basis too, that they can be available when you have something that comes up on the agenda that might require.
But we've done that. It could get expensive if we have them attend every meeting.
Right.
No, but,
Yeah.
when we have things that we'd like to have discussion.
So we were using the New Mexico, legal government group, right? That's who we were using.
So it's their NMLGL, that's a private attorney firm.
GL, okay.
And then the attorneys that we utilized for the cannabis that did really well and answered some questions was a separate firm that was contracted through the New Mexico Municipal League.
And we liked him.
Yes, I think so. I think they're really good.
There's
And
our,
don't forget, we still need an attorney for the court.
Right.
Because of the ordinance that we have.
So currently we have our general counsel, we have our water rights attorney, and we have our HR personnel attorney.
And you are pleased with the other two?
Yes, absolutely.
They're on contract, all of them, just on an as-needed basis.
Yes, sir.
So much
We
per hour.
spell it out typically not to exceed a certain dollar amount, and it usually goes from July 1 to June 30th for the fiscal year.
So I agree, we can give some options and weigh out
Yeah, we'll look at it.
their services, their price compared to.
Meanwhile, these ones are still answering for the courts here?
Yes, until June 30th, and then their contract is expired.
Because we have to look at that.
The main thing is make sure we don't have a lapse service.
thank you. Appreciate
So
it.
that's something else that needs to go on the meeting on the 16th?
Yes, we can do it two ways. I think it's too late to go out for a formal RFP, but typically our contract amounts for attorneys is well underneath the $60,000 threshold. So if we want to just, in the interim, we could actually sign off on a contract for say just 1 year, see how that works, and then
Yeah.
before we get closer to June of next year, we can go out for RFP and pursue other options as well. So we could shop around quickly within the next couple of weeks.
Do you think they'll even be available to do a contract?
Who's that?
The one that does for the league.
Potentially, that's where we're gonna have to explore our options.
Right.
See what happens.
Because the league uses it, and they're happy with it.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Discussion pertaining to the language for at-will city employees. And I knew you were gonna talk to us about something.
Yeah, I wanted to, first, I guess I had the chance to reach out to our HR attorney, which they're top notch. And the first question she asked was, what's the rationale behind wanting to do this? What's the overall goal? So I guess at this point, Commissioner Moy is the one that asked for this. What's the goal in doing this?
Well, actually, what happens, this has happened, a lot of times when I'm being in the commission. And one of the biggest goals that we have is that we have a department head that is not doing their job, and it is really hard at times to dismiss them when we don't have, and actually what happened, it disarrayed that whole department. It makes it a real, non-functioning or very, a department. And if you have the head of that department that is not doing, or, the minimum that he can do just to keep his job, and the whole bottom of the department is falling apart, then we got problems. And many times you can't get rid of that person because they're not at will. But if they're department heads and they're not doing their job, I think this commission has the right to dismiss them.
I know where you're going, I think, Commissioner. So first and foremost, Mayor, the commission has no oversight, no management of personnel. That's
Right.
strictly to the city
And
manager.
we understand that, but the problem is, when but the problem is that we're the governing body and we have authority over the city manager. And if something's coming to our complaint, we expect the city manager to do the work and not have to constantly be bombarded, or if thing is happening in that department that is not taking care of the safety or the safety of sewer, water, or whatever the department head is, it is this commission responsibility to make sure that the people of this community are protected or cared for.
So I believe it's the city's responsibility, the commission's responsibility to adopt policy,
And
ordinances.
and this is one policy.
And approve the budget. But when it comes to personnel, that's strictly the city manager. If there are concerns and complaints, the commission needs to address that with the city manager. The city manager then addresses it with the departments. So in an effort to try to get rid of people as a city commission, that's
It's
illegal.
not get rid of people because of that. As a commission, we don't, but that's where it gives the city manager more authority over the situation. Especially when you have a big conflict in that department or it's not working proper. And we have had that experience. And this is what it makes it hard because then, and like I said, this commission, and I'm not saying that, even though you keep repeating it, that we have that we're trying to get over personnel matter. It's not. You're the one, but we also have to give you policy and procedure so you can, not you, but whoever we hire to be able to utilize that authority. And this is the best way to help utilize that authority.
I'm surprised, you said the attorney was surprised that the question came up?
Yes, so let me give some background. I've done some research and I've talked to the attorney about it. I think there's some misconception what at-will definition is. She stated this whole state is an at-will state. That means you could be fired at any time if you violate policy. In the private sector and other sectors, you could actually fire someone just because you don't like them. However, there's some exemptions to that. If you are asked to do something that is immoral or illegal,
Dangerous.
that's not gonna work.
No.
If you are bound by public policy, which we are, we have our own progressive disciplinary section in our personnel policy. It says to follow that. It says you gotta do A, B, and C. There are some exceptions where you can go after somebody and fire them immediately, but it has to be detrimental. It has to be, they committed a felony. It has to be, they failed a drug test. It has to be, they did something very detrimental that warrants immediate termination. If not, you have to go through progressive disciplinary action based on our policy. So that supersedes anything else.
No, it doesn't supersede anything else as far as at-will employees, because we have ordinances that designate certain people.
Yeah.
that are at
So
will.
let's, everybody's at will, Commissioner, based on talking with the attorney, my research. You could fire someone. You could fire me. I could fire a department head just for the heck of it. But I can guarantee we're gonna get a wrongful termination lawsuit, and that's the same thing that our attorney stated. We have rules and policies and procedures set in place. And she said, it sounds more, what's being requested is a contract. A contract then negates everything else. The contract is a binding legal document,
Well,
which then at that point is different. She's highly advised against that. She said even the private sector is trying to avoid utilizing contracts. Not to mention that I've done some research, it's bad for morale within the workforce, within your departments. It said it's poor practice. It says,
It might be bad for morale, but it's also bad for morale when you have a leader that can't do the job. And in
well,
addition,
Commissioner, if there's some concerns.
and I think sometimes in the past, I had always brought it up to the city manager, and it doesn't happen. And then what happens is there's always an excuse why it's not corrected. But it gives us a little better leverage for the administrator to try and see what they can do to help correct or that error.
I believe it's a management concern that it's not a commission and passing
Well,
policies.
it's an ordinance that I think we need to look at, and I think it gives the administration a better tool to work with somebody who is not properly functioning or doing the work. Even though there's a lot of work to go through it, but at the same time, I think this might be the better leverage for us. I think if we need to get a good attorney and let them explain why we can or why we could. Because there's a lot of other communities that do have it. And we have had it in.
well, I agree with you. I think almost any that I know of have certain ones that are really designated at will. through ordinances.
Yes.
And policy. But we have an attorney telling us one thing.
An attorney,
Which ones, who do you think should be at will?
department heads only, you know, I mean, department heads, chief of police, city manager, that type of, a department head.
Again,
Well, the city manager falls under that anyway at their contract.
And usually a contract had to buy them out, you know.
there's what's known as an at-will contract, that fits more with what's being discussed. But all in all, again, all employees in the state of New Mexico, in all states, I think, but Montana, there's only a few states, are at-will employees. But again, you're walking a very thin line on liability and setting ourselves up for lawsuits if you're focusing and picking on certain individuals. And again, it's a management issue, it's holding people accountable through management. It's not something that, we already have the tools, we already have the policy that states progressive disciplinary action. There's no reason to.
We do, and it's spelled out, and that's especially for salaried employees, that you have to follow some progressive discipline unless it meets certain guidelines. And the difference between that and an at-will employee is you don't have to follow those strict progressive discipline, especially when it comes to a policy issue or a performance issue. And if they're not meeting a performance value on an at-will employee, you can terminate.
Yeah.
And normally, a department head or a figure like that is getting a lot higher pay.
Yes,
And that goes along with the pay, is if they do a good job, they're secure in their job. If they don't, then they know they're not secure. Now, I'm not a proponent of saying, all exempt, FLSA exempt personnel or department heads should be in there. But we do have an ordinance that covers some.
We do.
but what was the ordinance that was repealed?
Ordinance,
932.
the stuff through 932, yes.
Maybe that's the ordinance we need to give to an attorney to interpret for us and see.
I think the problem is that when they were recodifying and codifying, they maybe decodified the wrong things when they,
I believe there's in there, and I guess.
Yeah.
We have to look at that and see if we can revive it back up. I mean, you people don't understand.
but we do have that in our ordinance now, and I don't think we need to have anything else.
But right now, if a department head is malfunctioning and not doing what they're required to do, it's really hard to get rid of it.
Who will change the paperwork on the progressive discipline?
So it's up to the department head. So if it's a department head, then that falls on whoever's managing, whether it's the assistant city manager, the city manager, and then that goes filed through HR and again. If someone is not performing, we try to coach them and give them the tools they need to do the job successfully. And that's how we've been successful in staying on the right side of things, not setting ourselves up for lawsuits. Because if they are lacking in certain areas, we're able to try to help them. If it doesn't work, then we take it to the next step and they're removed. Since I've been here, both city manager and acting, we've had to let people go. But again, there's a process. I can't just say, hey, I got a commissioner that came in and citizens are complaining they're not doing their job, so they gotta go. I don't think that's appropriate.
I don't think that's what we meant. You know, by the time it gets to that level, the whole community is already knowing how bad they are and how bad that department is. I mean, you know, we can hear and manifest things that are really not realistic. But realistically, when it comes to getting rid of somebody as a department head, by that time, that person has pushed the limits as far as their authority. Whether it's not keeping the department up with whatever's needed to enforce things, or work with things, or negligent on here and there, you know, by that time, you're not only having one commissioner, you have the whole community on your case and other agencies on your case.
I don't believe
That's
it's
a
up to
management
the,
decision.
It is a management decision, but that's what I'm saying. That's why we have to be able to provide that tool and a policy that he can utilize.
I don't think it's up to the community or commission's opinions on how people are performing to determine if they're terminated or not. I think that comes.
Well,
down to
that's
management.
something that is philosophically you're saying, but the whole deal is when we have to answer it is a situation that has to be addressed because we have experienced the difficulties we have had.
If we terminate everybody on difficulties. it
No,
makes it
but you understand what I'm saying, and it's not everybody.
How do we address it then?
Yeah, if we address it and see if we can get a good opinion and get that ordinance that was repealed to be seen again and examined by a good attorney that deals with personnel.
Well, let's get a copy of the ordinance,
Yes.
all of us.
I don't think I
And
can
let
find
us read
it.
it.
Yeah, we have copies of it.
Okay.
I had asked her every time, she never sent it to me.
We're just setting a
No.
bad precedent. I feel
Well-
morale's already down with the city. You continue to do this, it's hard to employ and retain anybody. This is
Well,
just gonna
let
make
me
it worse.
see, do you have a problem with the ordinance the way it reads now?
No, it's fine. Like I said, we have tools in there. If we're appropriately managing these departments, it's gonna happen anyhow. I don't see the need to go above and beyond and make it into something that makes it easier for the community or the commission to put weight on the city manager to try to get rid of something. I think that's intimidation. There's no need for that.
It's not intimidation, because if you don't do your job, they don't get rid of you. That's how easy it is, you know? And then same thing with any department head. They don't do their job, it's up to the city manager to make sure that that is carried out.
Any more?
No, not for me.
Anybody else?
No, I think we need to look at this very seriously and go forward with it.
Are you dead again?
No,
Oh.
I figured that was it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. We'll have a little break here before the meeting starts.
Yeah, but- Water.